Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on closing more with predictive lead and account scoring. My name is Thomas Haymore from Inside Sales. Excited to have you guys on the line and to discuss about lead scoring and about how we can use predictive analytics to increase our chances of closing deals. While we're still waiting for people to join and get started, we have a short video clip
to be
we'd
successful,
like to play that
sales
highlights
reps
a
need
little
to
bit
focus on
about
the
what we
highest
do
quality leads
here
and
at
reach them
Inside
at the
Sales.
right time. They need a data-driven way to predict if a lead is likely to close and know the best time to call. NeuroView by InsideSales.com takes the guesswork out of prioritizing and contacting leads. It's an advanced lead scoring and prioritization system that goes above and beyond simple market scoring, telling them who is likely to close and who is actually contactable. NeuroView can help increase revenue by over 20%. See how NeuroView can help you sell more by directing sales efforts to your best leads.
All right, thanks everyone. That is a quick overview of what our predictive lead scoring product does. It's called NeuroView, and we're going to come back to that in a few minutes. But first, just a quick introduction. Again, my name is Thomas Haymore. I work on platform marketing here, and I work a lot with data and our predictive features and predictive products. And what excites me is knowing that we can use science to help our sales reps and the wider sales team just do better by helping them be more effective, more productive, and just overall understand more of what they're trying to do. And a lot of what I'll be talking about is how we can use predictive analytics to make sure that machines and computers are doing the things they're really good at and that humans are doing the things they're really good at. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that one of those two is really good at crunching numbers, analyzing data, and identifying patterns, and another of those is really good at selling and interfacing with other humans. But we'll get more into that. First, I'd like to start off with one of my favorite quotes by a famous scholar. Well, famous in some circles, not as famous perhaps as in some other circles. But the quote is, "In God we trust, all others must bring data." And I think that in today's world, you know, we don't anymore want to trust, what my gut tells me, or you don't want to trust, it just feels like a really good deal. I don't know how many of you may have seen the movie Moneyball. I guess it's kind of an older movie now, but it told the story of the Oakland Athletics and how they used data to do better at recruiting so they could win more games. And one of the things they show in the movie is about how kind of the old school practice of identifying baseball players. And it was rife with things like identifying who looks like a good baseball player, who feels like a good baseball player. And a lot of times in sales, we make the same judgments. Okay, what feels like a good deal? What does my gut tell me? There's room for that, but it shouldn't be the whole discussion. And in sales, we need to do better about actually trusting the data. And one of the nice things about sales is there is a ton of data in any sales organization, everything from calls to emails to close rates. And it gives us just this amazing opportunity to do a better job at data-driven sales. But before we get into sales specifically and into what Inside Sales does, I want to talk a little bit about what data is and specifically what is predictive data. So I don't know if anyone recognizes this graph. Again, I'd like to say this is a famous chart, but again, that might just be my own little data-centered world where I think this chart is super famous, and it's just me and 7 other people that really like it. But this is a chart that depicts Napoleon's march on Russia with his grand army. And the width of the arrow, starting from the left to the right, it depicts the number of soldiers he had. And you can see just how many soldiers he lost before he even got to Moscow. The black line, starting from the right and going to the left, is his return from Moscow. And so at the very left of the graph, you can see the comparison of the width of the beige line and the width of the black line. Now, this is an awesome graph. It shows very visually and viscerally kind of what an epic failure that campaign was. But this is not predictive. Sure, there are plenty of people that could have predicted for Napoleon that if he marched on Russia, disaster would ensue. You know, the old saying, never start a land war in Asia. But this graph is not predictive data. It's very interesting, but it's kind of in the BI realm of, hey, here's what happened, and let's figure out why what happened did happen. Here's another set of charts that you're probably familiar with, even if you don't know where they come from. These charts are from the Pew Center. So the Pew Charitable Trusts are an affiliation of centers and groups that do a lot of polling to try to understand, for instance, how the U.S. public engages with long-form articles on cell phones. Now, my favorite versions of these charts and graphs are ones that try to examine how millennials work, because right now we're all really obsessed with millennials. And when we try to figure out what motivates millennials, all sales managers are hiring millennials, and we're trying to figure out what motivates them. And of course, if you're in an older generation, it's all negative and about how millennials aren't motivated and they just want to travel the world, and they probably vote for Bernie Sanders, and they don't really want to work that hard. Of course, if you're a millennial, you think everyone older than you is ridiculous and that you're just standing in the way of their success. I love those millennial charts and graphs because they're exactly the same as the charts and graphs for Gen X before that, and probably even the generation before that. And they'll be the exact same charts and graphs we show for whatever generation is coming next. I'm not sure what will be called the Facebook generation or the Instagram generation. But those charts and graphs were too big to fit in a slide. So you're left with slightly less interesting graphs, but also still very informative. So this is showing some really, really important data for any marketers, especially content marketers, showing, okay, how do people engage in content? What are the ways they do? Cell phones, social media, and so forth. But this is not predictive data. Again, this is a snapshot. This is like, okay, this is what people are doing. And then you have to go and make your own inferences and figure out what you're going to do. It's not predictive. It doesn't tell you what's going to happen or what you should do. Still very informative. Now, if you're familiar with this graph, I would be incredibly, incredibly impressed. This graph actually does relate to predictive data. And I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail in the graph itself. I might come back to it, the chart itself. I might come back to it in a minute. But I'm going to skip forward to give you a great visual of the subjects of this study. So this was a predictive analytics study done with cows. The great thing about this is I think we should take the lesson that if we can do this with cows, we can do it with anybody. So a lot of times when we deal with sales organizations, we feel like we confront a kind of a monolithic culture of just the way sales works. It's not true, but it's an easy characterization to say, oh, sales doesn't like to change. Their culture means they like to make gut judgments, or, they're coin operated. But, cows are even less tractable for management than any employees, sales or not. So if we can make this work with sales, we can make it work with anybody. So what is this study? So this study was about cows being in heat, when cows are more likely to get pregnant. Why does that matter? Because in today's world, right, we don't think of cows. We think of perhaps the meat that's at Costco or the meat that's at the grocery store, or we think about whether or not a mushroom can taste enough like meat that I will buy the mushroom burger next time. But we don't really think about cows. It's things like, oh, that's solved. There are people out there that have farms, they raise cows, and they deliver that meat to the grocery store. They kind of have it all figured out. It's a boring industry. Well, it turns out it's actually incredibly complicated. Cows have a very, very short window of time during which they can become pregnant, and it only happens every several weeks. And so the accuracy with which a farmer can fertilize a cow and then deliver the right kind of either a female or male cow has a huge impact on the profitability of that farm. So you'll see these cows have a little bit of bling, a little bit of a little bovine bling on their ankles there with what are motion trackers. And there's I'll come back to why motion trackers are a beautiful solution. But this situation here, they decided to track cows' movements, because the old solution was farmers would stay awake all night, or have someone stay awake all night monitoring the cows, trying to figure out when they might be in heat. They put these motion trackers on the cows, and they discovered a pattern. So the green line is a cow's pattern of activity when they are when they're not in estrus, which means they're not likely to become pregnant. And so it's just normal. They have a day where they kind of walk around, they kind of relax and chill out at night, and they go back to being active in the morning. The yellow line, or gold, depending on how it shows up on your screen, is how the farmer detects when a cow's in heat. And you see a massive spike in activity. Unfortunately, it's almost always at night and not during daytime hours when people actually want to work with cows. And you see another version, component of the graph on the right, where it says optimum time for artificial insemination, probable female, probable male. So the study run by Fujitsu in farms in India attached these motion detectors, figured out when the cows were in heat and when they were most likely to be able to deliver to a calf. And they figured out even when they could predict the probable female, probable male. This is amazing data. And it ended up having a drastic impact on the profitability of these farms. So you're seeing a graph here with some highlights of the overall increase in profitability. So one of these farms saw a 31% increase in their margin, which is just it's an amazing impact on this, because instead of wasting the resources of having someone staying up all night and watching these cows, trying to figure out if they're ready to get pregnant, and then trying their best to do the artificial insemination and just seeing what happened, they were able to make it scientific. They were able to figure out, okay, this is when the cow's in heat, this is when it's likely to give birth. I need a female cow or I need a male cow, and to be able to plan accordingly. So even in an industry that's been around for, I'm not an anthropologist, but I wager that thousands of years this industry has been around, probably older than sales, or at least as old as sales as a human activity, then we can still see improvements in applying predictive analytics. So that's my story about cows. And I'll get to in a minute. This visual you see right now is okay, this is how predictive is in sales. But again, before we go into our product or how we do this with sales, I want to go a little bit deeper on why that story with cows was so interesting. So how do we make predictive work? We know that predictive means we're going to predict something. We know that based on that prediction, we'll need to take action, and hopefully that action will have above average returns or competitive returns or some form of returns that makes it worthwhile. But predictive is not easy, and it's because it's not simply algorithms. So I've drawn a fancy little pyramid here with three really important vertices. So how do you make predictive work? You need data. You need lots of data. You need tons of data, but most importantly, you need the right kind of data. The nice thing about predictive analytics is that the algorithms, the predictive science, which is on the lower left, helps you sort out that data and identify what is important. You do need predictive science. You need a team of data scientists, or buying from a vendor that has a team of data scientists. And one of the reasons for that is identifying the data that's really important. A lot of the algorithms that data scientists use have actually been around a while. So if anyone on this webinar has ever done what's called a logistic regression, then congratulations, you have done predictive science. Now, anyone that's done logistic regressions probably also remembers not being able to do much with them, and that's because it's actually very hard to string it together with data and these other things that I'm talking about. But predictive science has grown up a lot, and a lot of predictive science is actually data science. And that means working with the data to get it to a state that it's useful, understanding what's not useful, and putting in place systems that capture the data and render it useful for something like a logistic regression. The final vertex here is called prescriptive applications. What do we mean by prescriptive applications? To get to that, let's imagine if we just had data and predictive science, if we didn't have this third vertex. If we had data and predictive science, what we call that is a BI team. We might be able to predict some future state and deliver that, say, in a spreadsheet to a decision maker. But that's missing the magic of predictive science. If the only analytics we can do are retrospective and then maybe delivered as a study of some sort to a decision maker, we're losing the ability to act in real time on that predictive intelligence. So prescriptive applications are a way of delivering predictive insights directly to end users. So in the cow study we just talked about, we have, let me skip one ahead, sorry. So in the cow study we just talked about, how do they make predictive work? So they had data, but they needed a particular type of data. They probably had data on weather patterns, on the age of the cow, the health of the cows, the weight of the cows, the size of the farm, the number of people working there. Turned out what really, really mattered was the steps of the cow was taking. So then they use specific types of predictive science, in this case detecting estrus, or disease. Part of the study, they were able to detect which cows were infected with diseases. I, for one, would be more than willing to wear a little bling if it helped me detect when I might be coming down with certain sicknesses. These cows didn't have a choice, but presumably they were also happy with the outcome. But that was particular algorithms they had developed to make it easy to detect based on the steps the cows were taking when they were likely to be in heat. And then they built a monitoring and communication platform. This data would not have been very useful if a BI team had delivered it to the farming management and said, hey, by the way, last month, 6 of your cows were ready for artificial insemination on Tuesday. And the management can be like, that would have been really valuable to know on Tuesday. So they set it up with a monitoring and communication platform that would detect the cow steps in real time, deliver that to the farm management and the farm workers so they knew exactly when they needed to respond and implement the artificial insemination program. Similarly, in the sales world, how do we at Inside Sales make predictive work with what we call Neuralytics? So if you're not familiar with Inside Sales, Neuralytics is our data and predictive analytics platform. So Neuralytics is able to basically suck in any sort of data from any customer, analyze it with our algorithms, and produce models that predict behavior and deliver it through a sales acceleration platform. But let me go more deeply into each of these points. So Neuralytics has over 90 billion data points, actually just recently over 100 billion data points and growing. But here's the caveat there. That data is only part of the story. Just like the farms also had data on temperatures and weather patterns, what they needed was data on each individual cow. Now, I'm not trying to make an analogy between your companies and a cow, but specifically what Neuralytics needs is its data plus your company's data. It takes each company's sales activity data and makes that part of its overall data corpus. Then all those data points are fed into lead account opportunity scoring and other algorithms. And those algorithms are able to take each company's individual data plus our enormous corpus of generalizable data and then understand where the patterns are and what really matters. And then we're able to produce scores. But again, the key last step is our sales acceleration platform. Just like the farmers had a monitoring and communication system that worked in real time, you need a platform that also works in real time. So these scores are delivered in real time to the reps in a useful manner. So if they weren't, let's imagine what would happen if we didn't have a sales acceleration platform. We'd have all this data, which is amazing. We're really proud of it. It's our favorite child among all the things in our company. Our data is our most specialist thing to us. But that data would not do much without analytics. But if all we had were data and analytics, we'd end up delivering it to a sales team in the form of a spreadsheet. And then they'd have to take that spreadsheet and they'd have to figure out how to upload it or deliver it to reps and figure out, okay, if I have these scores, now what do I do with them? Am I building views in Salesforce? Am I using this in Microsoft Dynamics? Am I using this in a homegrown CRM? And like a lot of sales teams, they would figure out, you know what, I just don't have time for this. I don't have enough sales ops. I don't have enough IT or sysadmins. I'm just going to go with my gut and trust my sales reps to do their best. We have a sales acceleration platform, though, that will take those scores and then move those directly to a sales rep in a way that they can use them to act on those predictive insights right away. Now, those are the three key pillars or vertices of a predictive system. When we say predictive analytics, we are not just saying, hey, we have lots of data. Predictive analytics uses these cool algorithms to help predict the future. When we're saying in the industry we have predictive sales tools, we're saying we have a way to take those predictive insights and deliver them directly to reps to have an impact on the ground in real time. So, knowing that framework of how predictive analytics work, let's talk about why we would want this. Again, we have the cow example. We saw the results. We saw this 31% increase in the bottom line for at least one farm. So why would we have predictive prioritization? So we see here that 79% of marketing leads never convert to sales. So those of you in sales who are jealous of marketing budgets, are kind of filled with this sort of, long-standing bitterness and anger of the sales org toward marketing, thinking, oh, only 79%, what's the deal with that? And then those of you that might be listening to marketing are like, oh, but it's probably the sales fault anyway. 100% of our leads are perfect and they'll always convert. I mean, neither story is completely true, right? A lot of the marketing leads may not be 100% awesome. but also the marketing leads may just not be ready to convert, or maybe they're just looking for a different value prop. There's truth to both sides of the story, but what comes down to is that inbound and outbound reps spend too much time chasing a lead that we know from the get-go is unlikely to close. Now, it doesn't really matter if a lead is never going to close. What really matters is that reps should be spending their time on promising leads and accounts and not wasting their time on unpromising leads and accounts. So let me help you understand what I'm talking about with a visualization. So in our studies of how leads convert is depicted here. And what you see is the number of leads in gray, and you see the number on the left. And then you see the number of leads worked in green. And on the bottom, you see them binned by lead quality. And if we scored them 0 to 100, this is typically what we'd see. We'd see kind of a roughly even distribution of both the number of leads by quality and also the percentage of leads worked in each bin. In almost every sales org that has a high volume transaction model, you're going to see only a small percentage of each of these bins worked. Simply, there's not enough sales reps to work each lead. In lower volume companies that generally work with accounts and expansion opportunities, this will be different, and I can discuss a little bit about that toward the end of the presentation. But in a high volume sales org, this is what you're facing. Now, pay attention to the dotted line. So the dotted line is the close rate, and you see it depicted on the right. Now, the dotted line for the first half or to 60% of these leads is virtually the same. It is a close rate at 1.5% or lower. And then you start to see it rise really rapidly and then skyrocket at around 80 to 90 lead quality score. Now, if you knew the lead quality, if you knew the likelihood of closing, why would you ever assign reps to leads that had a 0 to 40 score, even a 0 to 50 score, unless they literally had nothing else to do? Because what you can do is if we align rep effort to the actual likelihood of close, so instead of having sort of a random mix of reps assigned to leads, just helter-skelter, you actually have reps assigned to leads that are most likely to close, which means your close rate can absolutely skyrocket. And so what you need to be able to do this is you need some manner of scoring your leads and then delivering that to your reps so they can work the leads that are the most impactful in terms of most likely to close. And this is what we mean by predictive prioritization. The predictive part is, hey, which of these leads are most likely to close? And the prioritization is you actually have to assign your reps times to those leads. In marketing, we don't use the same words, but it's similar. You have your nurture campaigns for leads that, like they look promising at some point in the future, but you're not going to really pump a lot of money or a lot of demand gen at them or a lot of live bodies at them because at some point they'll pop up and they'll do something a little more significant like go to a pricing page. So the difference between predictive prioritization and, I don't want to call it traditional market lead scoring because market lead scoring also hasn't been around forever, but say standard market lead scoring is that predictive prioritization relies more on machine learning. So standard market lead scoring will use a set of rules, often human derived. So for instance, it might say, if this person goes and downloads a piece of content, that's X number of points. If they visit this page, it's X number of points. And if they go to a pricing page, it's a huge signal because that's a buying signal. We're going to push them over. We're going to qualify them and push them over to sales immediately. Predictive prioritization on the sales side is different. It uses machine intelligence to identify all the data points we have about a lead and then analyze which one's actually more indicative. So it might be true that for the most part, the size of the deal or visiting a certain web page is a pretty good generic indicator. But with machine learning, you can actually find patterns and interactions. So it might be that a particular industry in a particular geographic setting is actually a really good indicator. And that's the kind of analysis that would be very difficult for a human to do because the data sets are just too huge and the complexity is too high. Okay, so next, I want to jump into a discussion of specifically what our products at Inside Sales do as an illustration of how you make this work. And we'll talk about situations both for high volume sales teams using leads And also sales teams that work perhaps accounts or opportunities, lower volume, but they still need predictive intelligence to prioritize their time. But first, I want to push a poll to the audience of what predictive lead or account scoring solutions are you using now. And you should see several options on your screen, including some market lead scoring. In our world, in selling our solutions to sales, we found that we actually have a great partnership with market lead scoring, is that we work just fine together with market lead scoring. But some might use only one or the other. So anyway, please fill it out. Let us know what you're using, and we'll share the results in just a minute. All right, we have the perfect audience here. The winner is none or other. Unsurprisingly, Marketo has a nice presence. We actually use Marketo ourselves, and we partner with our own scoring at Inside Sales. So for those of you who have none, this is perfect. We can learn a little bit more about scoring. For those of you that have other, I'd love to hear more in the Q&A about which solutions you're using and how you feel about them. But again, just to reemphasize, we see a partnership between market lead scoring and sales scoring, and I think you'll see why in just a minute as I jump to the actual kind of deep dive into our product. So we call our platform Neuralytics. Neuralytics is our data and predictive platform that does all the hard, heavy lifting behind the scenes. We also call our platform a sales acceleration platform, and that by sales acceleration we mean the way we deliver this to the sales rep. So in this screen right here, you're seeing a visualization of our NeuralView product. This is a slightly idealized version of NeuralView for your benefit. We don't necessarily have this. Every sales rep would not necessarily see the full bells and whistles of this visualization right here, but this is our prettiest version we can show you. So what you're looking at here, this is actually, I believe, in the Dynamics platform, but it works virtually the same in Salesforce. You're seeing two scores, a neural score and a contactability score. So the reason we have two scores is specific to the needs of a sales rep. And again, this is why we work well with market lead scoring. The neural score, and I know we like the word neural, just think of neural as our way of saying this is a really smart thing you should pay attention to. So our neural score is the close score. This indicates the likelihood that this person is going to buy or convert to an opportunity, depending on how you want to set it up. And this is updated every day. So this person right now has a 45 out of 100. It's not percentages. It doesn't mean there's a 45% chance. It just means, in this case, below average. So maybe not someone there want to work right now. The second score, again, specific to the needs of sales reps need to know when they can get someone on the phone. If they can get someone on the phone, they can increase their contact rates. It has a huge impact on their overall close rates. The contactability score is a 64, higher than average, still not phenomenal, but they can use these two scores together to prioritize how they reach out to their leads. So for instance, here is, I believe, a view in Salesforce, and you can see the neural score visualized right there. So any sales rep or sales manager can build a view based on that score and then organize it by score and just work down that view. They could also do it by contactability. And that's just using native functionality in the CRM. I can go a step further, though, and we can build something called a seek list, which is something we provide that integrates directly with the CRM. And you can turn on neural sort together with neural score. And so you could say, for instance, okay, from the hottest hours of the day, say 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., I want my reps to only work the leads that are most likely to close. And then I want to work the leads that are most likely to contact first. So the great thing is that you know that during those prime hours of the day, your reps are working the most promising leads. And so you're going to see your contact rates go up, you see your close rates go up, because all we're doing is using the data that's already in your system, that's already in Neuralytics, to understand the patterns that indicate a likelihood to close and a likelihood to contact. So if we go back to our framework of how to make predictive work, we don't want to forget about the farmer. So let me explain what I mean by that. So we said at Neuralytics we have 90 billion data points, we have lead, account, opportunity scoring, and more, and we have a sales acceleration platform. Why am I asking what about the farmer? Well, in the cow scenario, we had data on cow steps, we had models on predict the efficacy of artificial insemination, and we had a monitoring and communication platform. But what about the farmer? At the end of the day, the farmer is the one that has to act on this information. If the farmer doesn't act, the farmer fails to get the benefit. And guess what? If the farmer fails to act, he's not going to think to himself, hey, this platform was really cool. I'm the failure. It's my fault as a farmer. I'm a bad farmer. The farmer's not going to think that. The farmer's going to think what every other user of technology thinks. They're going to think this is a stupid product. You know, if the cell phones that we buy don't actually deliver the benefit we want, even if it's our own stupidity preventing us from doing that, we're going to think this is a stupid phone. Apple should do better, or Google should do better. Same with the farmer, and same with a sales rep. If you don't have a way to deliver these insights in a way that makes it actionable for the rep, their conclusion is going to be, this is a stupid platform, not, oh, maybe I'm not that great of a rep and I need to do better. So we got to remember what about the rep and stay focused on the benefits we're delivering to them. And here are a few of the critical tasks. I apologize, this is a bit of a word wall. I'm not going to speak to all of the points on here, but it just reemphasizes why the benefits that NeuralView and other predictive scoring solutions can deliver really matter for the rep, because it delivers key benefits and it saves a lot of time. And it learns with the rep. So every time the rep takes an action, Neuralytics can improve and make better recommendations down the road. You know, a quick overview of one of our clients. So Outbound Engine was a really interesting use case for us because they had what they called a highly tuned sales org. So these folks at Outbound Engine already had just an amazing sales ops team, an amazing ability to really get the most out of their data and the most out of their systems. And so it was a really huge challenge for, can predictive analytics add something on top of what the best humans can already do? And what we saw, the answer was a resounding yes. A 24% increase in revenue, a 30% lift in contact rate, and you know, a lot more benefits besides. And so I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation the difference between what a human can do and what a computer can do. The great thing about NeuralView is it's not trying to replace a sales rep's judgment. A sales rep still needs to make judgment about how to find a value that fits the customer, how to negotiate, how to build a relationship with a customer, all things that a machine is actually quite terrible at doing now. I mean, artificial intelligence in the future might replace us all, but for now, we really need humans to do that work. What Neuralytics can come in and do is saying, okay, you have big data, but big data is useless without really well-tuned algorithms that can deliver insights to you directly. And that's what this customer found, is with the best that humans could do, Neuralytics could still come in and add 24% more in revenue. So I want to transition now to talk about sales teams that may not have a high volume model. We have a predilection to talk about in the inside sales world about how our solution and how predictive scoring generally can help with high volume teams that use leads. I want to talk a little bit about Sales Advisor, which uses our same Neuralytics engine to, instead of identifying leads that are most likely to close in contact, it identifies opportunities that are most likely to close. But it does it in two ways. As you can see on your screen, on the right, there are two questions. Can I win this deal, and can I win this quarter? Now, for any sales org, as you know, the question of can I win is not as important as can I win in this quarter. Sales teams live and die by hitting their quarterly numbers and their yearly numbers. If there is a company that looks like a promising deal, but it might take 18 months to 24 months to close, hey, that might be worth it. If you're on an enterprise account, that might be the sales cycle, but that is not going to help you hit your numbers 3 months from now. You need to understand which opportunities are likely to close in the given quarter. We go a little bit deeper with Sales Advisor, and we give what we call key indicators, which give a thumbs up and thumbs down. Now, again, back to what makes the right division of labor between a computer and a human. So for NeuralView, when we're dealing with high volume sales leads, we give scores. We give numbers that make it easy to build dial lists or easy to build engagement lists or campaigns. For Sales Advisor, which works with opportunities, often low volume, high dollar opportunities, what we need to understand is which are most likely to close. I'm going to work those first. I'm going to focus on the opportunities that are more likely to close in this quarter because that means revenue for my sales org. And so what Neurolytics does through Sales Advisor is identifies which are most likely to close this quarter, some key indicators, and it lets the rep then base their actions off of that and try to win those deals. Again, we have a little bit of a word wall here about all the critical tasks done better with Sales Advisor. I don't want to bore you to death by reading all of those factors here. But again, it's about where can we fill the gaps with what humans are doing, supplement them, fill in their weaknesses with strengths from machine learning and Neurolytics, and make sales reps better. Here's a quick quote from one of our Sales Advisor customers about how inside sales through Sales Advisor gives the entire organization ability to forecast and be on the same page and understand how their opportunities, how they can work the right opportunities at the right time. Okay, that was an overview of our approach to predictive analytics, how you can make it work in your own sales org, and how we make it work with our products. To sum up, I think to return to our cow example, how do you make predictive work? You need the data, you need the algorithms, you need the platform that delivers these insights to your reps in the sales world. And in Neurolytics, what does that mean? It means we need data points on the companies and leads and accounts and opportunities. It means we need algorithms, how to score these, and a sales acceleration platform that delivers these all to the reps in real time so they can act on it. So that's the end of my scripted presentation, such as it was. I'd like to give you guys a few minutes to drop in any Q&A. One specific question would be, how do you guys currently prioritize your sales team efforts? I know several of you said you don't use any predictive lead and account scoring. So if you don't use that, what methods do you use or processes do you use to make sure that your reps are focusing on the most promising accounts and leads first? But feel free to please drop in any other questions in the Q&A, and we'll spend a few minutes to answer any that might come up. One of our first questions is asking for more information and resources on Neurolytics. It's a great question. So Neurolytics, as I may have hinted at, is kind of our big bad beast, or the wizard behind the curtain of making analytics work. So the best way to use Neurolytics is with the products NeuralView and Sales Advisor, and understanding it's a partnership between the product and process. If you're already a user of Inside Sales, the best way is to reach out to your account manager, your customer success manager, and get the community resources on our community page. And I think it's community.insidesales.com, and understand how can Neurolytics help me improve and change my process. With any technology adoption, don't make the mistake of it's a completely drop it in, plug and play, and you're off to the races. You got to understand how using neural scores can help you change your sales reps' processes so they're working on the most promising leads first, and really understand with your sales managers, okay, what does that mean? What do I need to change in these reps' processes to make sure they take advantage of it? Oh, great. We have another great question on Neurolytics again, in terms of what data does Neurolytics have that supplements the data, say, an individual company might have on their own customers? Fantastic question. And it's about a division of labor between what you provide and what Neurolytics or Inside Sales provides. So Neurolytics has a couple of layers of data. One of them is external data we append on macro and more microeconomic indicators. This might be anything from a company's stock price to the current GDP of the company of the country, to even what we know if the company is a private company and raising money from venture capitalists. And depending on what those numbers are, it could be an indicator the company is a really hot target to buy, or it could be an indicator the company doesn't have enough money to buy and might be right to move on. We also use some other indicators that I think are somewhat unique to us, such as weather. It's kind of an oddball example, but for contactability rates, one of the things to understand is the person you're trying to contact more likely to be inside? For instance, if it's sunny in Seattle, you're going to have a difficult time getting hold of people that day. But if it's raining in LA, everyone's inside because everybody in LA is afraid of the rain because it never happens. So those are a few examples. And that's one layer, which is this external data, often called append data or enrichment data. We also have a layer that's unique to us, and that's our interaction data. So for instance, we are able to generate sort of universal algorithms based on just our overall interaction patterns. So we anonymize any of the data we observe from our clients, but then from those patterns, those anonymous patterns, we're able to understand best times to contact, or what generally indicates a company is likely to buy, or a contact. So for instance, we can understand the title of, from your data, we can understand what's the title of a contact. And we can use our external data from thousands of customers and millions of data points to understand, okay, what does the title of that person mean, for instance, in terms of likelihood to close. And then Neurolytics is also data agnostic. So if we have a client that works in, say, manufacturing space, and they might track environmental regulations or violations, Neurolytics can consume that data and understand how that data impacts the likelihood to close. So that's a partnership. That last layer is a partnership where the company is still providing the data, but it's Neurolytics that is figuring out how that data plugs into other bits of data to form a pattern that might indicate a likelihood to close or contact. Another question on Neurolytics about what data do we ask for from our clients in order to perform the analysis. That's a great question. So it depends. During the implementation phase, we'll get into the details of that with any particular client. But the data, I think one of the concerns here is the privacy and security of the data. And so we have pretty strict measures in place to make sure that data stays segregated between the companies. So no company has access or of any sort to another company's data. What we do is we try to we anonymize and de-identify so that there's no person identifiable information, there's no company identifiable information, like we can't identify that, oh, this particular bit of data came from that particular company, before we analyze the patterns from it. And in terms of what specific data, it can be open-ended with the company. So again, Neurolytics is data agnostic, so it'll take any bits of data. But typically, you'd think of it as being the typical data. So for instance, industry, if you have that tracked, would be fantastic. Title of the contact. The typical things which are most valuable are the things that Neurolytics needs the most to work with. But it's not a very invasive process. We tend to work directly with the client through their CRM. We have another great question on how a relatively new company that doesn't have a huge history of leads closed won, could make Neurolytics work for them. It's a great question. And to my point earlier about the data that Neurolytics has, we actually have universal models based on our aggregate anonymized data. So what I mean by that is we actually have a universal model that works with most companies in most industries and provides a score for leads in a company database, even if that company hasn't been around a lot. So, for instance, if you're brand new and have no leads closed in your database, you could still apply the universal Neurolytics model and still prioritize how your reps work based on that. And Neurolytics will continue to ingest all of your interactions and results after that. And then as soon as there's a viable corpus of data, which doesn't usually take too long, then Neurolytics can switch over to a customized model for your company that is still informed by our general data, but is really tailored to your individual company's results. We have another great question on Neurolytics about what kind of data points we use to predict which lead or opportunity is most likely to close. It's a great question, and it requires a little bit of a recap of what machine learning does. So we worked with a client once that had 800 fields in Salesforce for each lead. And if any of you use Salesforce, you'll understand that that is quite a large number of fields. Companies can customize Salesforce extensively, but 800 fields is a lot of data. So Neurolytics, thankfully, does not care what humans think about each of those fields. So Neurolytics will ingest each of those, if the company wants to use all those fields, and analyze which of these actually correlate to the outcome. So you won't be surprised by some of the results. So some of the results might be, industry, geography, size of the company, things like that, stock price, title of the contact. Those are pretty standard. And just like any algorithm, Neurolytics will identify those as being influential. But the other thing Neurolytics doesn't care about, it doesn't care about how you divide your segment. So you might have a SMB segment, a mid-market segment, depending on employee size. Neurolytics doesn't care about that. Neurolytics will tell you, actually, your sweet spot might be companies between 175 employees and 362 employees. And that might violate some internal boundaries in the segments, but it gives you like a really good sweet spot on the number of employees. It might also identify something such as the last time a campaign was sent, or days since last call, or the disposition of the last call. And those, if you have our sales acceleration platform, those are tracked fairly automatically and can be used. But it might be as simple as someone that had a call 2 days ago, and the disposition of the call was, a successful call, and in terms of they were able to get a hold of the person, and then you sent them a PDF, a piece of collateral. Then 2 days later, the person is primed and ready to either talk again or maybe close. So it's a mixture of pretty standard strong indicators such as industry, because each company tends to perform well or poorly in specific industries, but then also very specific stuff that is hard to predict for each company. So this company that had 800 fields, Neurolytics identified about 129 of those fields that had a relationship. And then for each of those fields, it could identify, okay, which values had a really strong outcome. And so for that company, we identified some interesting things that we didn't see other ways, which was, for instance, the name of the last campaign that was sent, or actually the particular VP that was over an account, which was great for that VP, right? That's a huge indicator that they're doing well. But it also is very unique to each company, and part of the process of installing Neurolytics is we'll go through a rundown with you where we'll do a dry run of Neurolytics and come back to you and say, hey, look, here are the fields and the values that Neurolytics is indicating has lots of predictive power. Let's go through that and see if we can learn from that and make your company better and Neurolytics better. All right, I think that is the end of our Q&A. And thank you, everyone, for attending the webinar. Feel free to reach out to me. My Twitter address is on the slide. Love to talk about data. Any questions about data, especially if they relate to my job here at Inside Sales, makes it even easier for me to answer without feeling bad about taking the time away. But please, let's keep talking about predictive prioritization, how it can help. And if you have even more off-the-wall and oddball examples like artificial cow insemination, please send them to me. My challenge is to get the least likely but most interesting example that helps us understand how predictive analytics is relevant in sales. And again, if you have any questions about NeuralView, Neurolytics, Sales Advisor, happy to arrange a call or a follow-up email with myself and the product managers to help you understand more. Again, thanks everyone for attending, and I hope this helped you all understand more about predictive analytics.